Welcome back to Smith History, separating the Smith from the myth. The podcast where the stories are sometimes in the gutter, at least as I remember them, and the scorecards are always slightly inflated. I'm your host, Brian Smith, one of the 5 Smith boys of Lester and Ellen. Raised in the 1960s and 70s when sports were pure, athletes weren't branded, and nobody had a personal trainer. Today we're rolling, quite literally, down memory lane. And yes, this podcast is in honor of my younger brother Randy, who was destined from birth to be a bowler. When your middle name is Lane, you don't really get a choice. It's like naming a kid Chip and being surprised when he becomes a golfer. This episode is about the sporting life of the Smith family, specifically one of the sports that shaped us, humbled us, and occasionally bruised a toe or two: bowling. Now, before we get into the Smith saga, let me set the scene. The 1960s were the absolute peak of bowling in the United States. Bowling alleys were everywhere, like Starbucks today, except cheaper and with better lighting. The Pro Bowlers Association was on TV every weekend. And my dad and my brothers, it was one of the few times all of us sat relatively still, mesmerized by men with perfect comb-overs and polyester shirts that could stop traffic. Bowling was America's sport. It was affordable, family-friendly, and didn't require running, sweating, or any risk of being tackled by a neighborhood kid. In other words, it was perfect for the Smith boys. Now, let's talk about the original Smith bowling duo, our mom and dad. My dad was a bowler through and through. He wasn't into tennis, golf, or running 5Ks. He believed running was something you only did if a dog was chasing you. But bowling hit his sweet spot. He had trophies, tall, shiny, glorious trophies. Mom lined him up on the buffet like a miniature Hall of Fame. Mom was present. And in the 1960s, that counted. Somehow, Dad talked her into joining a Dukes and Duchess League in the 1960s. To this day, I don't know how he pulled that off. Maybe he promised her a night out. Maybe he promised her quiet. Maybe he promised her she wouldn't have to cook that night. Whatever it was, she agreed. But here's the thing. Our mom had just had 4 kids in 5 years. 2 of them were 9-pound twins. She was still trying to get her body back, her energy back, and probably her sanity back. Bowling was supposed to be the safe sport, the easy sport. And then there came a moment as an 8-year-old I will never forget. Picture this. I'm 8 years old, sitting on those hard, plastic, brightly colored bowling seats that were designed by someone who hated children. We're at the bowling alley, and I'm watching Mom step up to the stripe. She takes her steps. She swings her arm back. She swings her arm forward. And the ball goes backward. Yes, backward, behind her, toward the spectators, toward me. Now, I didn't see my short life flash before my eyes, but it was pretty close. The ball missed me by a couple feet, and I remember hearing snickers from the opposing team. Mom retrieved the ball with the dignity of a queen who had just tripped over her gown. I remember looking at Dad, who took a long sip of his cold beverage. And I'm pretty sure that was Mom's first and last season in the Dukes and Duchess League. Now I want to fast forward to the early 1970s. I remember my dad taking me with him to his bowling league. Now this was a serious team. 5 men who could bowl like pros. And Dad was the anchor, the closer, the Mario Rivera of the lanes. On this particular night, something magical happened. The first man on his team bowled a strike. The second teammate bowled a strike. And the third man bowled a strike. I remember Dad leaning over to me and he whispered, "If everyone bowls a strike, I have to bowl one too." I said, "Why?" He said, "Because if I don't, I have to buy a round of drinks." Then he added the words that haunt every father of 5, "and I have no money on me." Well, the fourth man, he got a strike. I looked at Dad. He did turn a little pale. I whispered to myself, "Come on, Paul, be a strike." Dad walked up to the stripe with the focus of a man who knew the fate of his wallet, and his pride hung in the balance. He took extra time, and he threw that ball like a man possessed. The pins exploded. The team erupted. Dad, well, he exhaled. And I learned that night what clutch really meant. Now, it wasn't the World Series. It wasn't the Super Bowl. It was a Thursday night in a smoky bowling alley with a man who couldn't afford to buy a round. But he came through. Now let's talk about the 5 Smith boys. I'll start with my brother Jeff. Jeff struggled in some sports growing up. He had a thyroid issue, but bowling, I think Jeff was pretty good at. There was one magical year, 1978, where Jeff, Dad, and I bowled in a league together. And we won the whole thing on the last game of the season. I still have the newspaper clipping, preserved like a national treasure. But I have other memories of Jeff at the bowling alley. I once dropped a 15-pound bowling ball in Jeff's big toe. Jeff, to this day, probably thinks it was intentional. I still maintain it was gravity, and gravity is undefeated. I move on to my brother Rick. Rick was a tennis star, a pretty good golfer. He was a good athlete, but bowling? Let's just say the pins were safe when Rick was up. But Randy's middle name is literally Lane. He was born to bowl. He once bowled a perfect game, a 300. Now, in bowling, that's the holy grail, the turkey of turkeys, the strike of strikes. Now, Brother Rick, he's still trying to even the score by getting the first Smith family hole-in-one in golf. He hasn't got there yet, but I wouldn't be surprised if he does get there. Now let's go to youngest brother Kyle. By the time Kyle came along, Dad had retired from bowling and probably from active parenting. And by the looks of Kyle's bowling form, I have a feeling Mom might have given Kyle bowling lessons. Now, he did have potential, but he just didn't have the bowling bug like the rest of us. As for me, I was okay. One of my problems, I have size 15 feet, which meant finding rental shoes was like finding a unicorn. And I never put in the practice hours. I've been too busy in life pursuing degrees and chasing patients down hallways with their meds. Now, bowling in America has declined greatly since the 1970s for a lot of reasons. It costs more. There are fewer alleys, and the Pro Bowlers Tour isn't exactly must-see TV anymore. In the 2000s, though, we had a brief renaissance thanks to the Nintendo Wii. Randy's house became the epicenter of virtual bowling, and we all got pretty good at it. We could be champions again. Wii legends. But that fade has passed too. Now, Dad's trophies, they're gone now. That buffet is long gone and empty. Mom and Dad, unfortunately, are gone too. But the memories, the moments, the stories, they are still here. In my mind, still vivid. Still rolling around in my mind like a ball headed for the pocket. And I'm grateful. I'm grateful for these podcasts to tell these stories. Grateful to preserve them. Grateful to keep the Smith legacy alive, one story at a time. So, what separates the Smith from the myth? It's simple. It's not the trophies. It's not the perfect games. It's not the strikes, the spares, or the turkeys. It's the laughter, the chaos. It's the ball that went backward. It's the toe that got crushed. It's Dad under pressure, needing a strike more than any man has ever needed a strike. It's the brothers ribbing each other, supporting each other, and occasionally accusing each other of intentional toe injuries. It's the stories that roll on long after the lanes have closed. And if I drop the ball on anything today, well, that strikes me pretty funny. This has been Smith History, separating the Smith from the myth. I'm Brian Smith, rolling us out. Until next time, keep your mind out of the gutter and your stories headed straight down memory lane.